Mike, thank you very much for joining me on the Scooter Space. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Thank you. How you doing, Nick?
Yeah, really good, thank you, buddy. Really good. All the better now I'm seeing you. But yes, for the audience today, we've got a cracker of an episode. We will be discussing why we should be paying more attention to the dark web. But before we get into it, Mike, are you okay just to let the audience know a little bit about yourself, if that's okay?
Yeah, certainly. So, Mike Johnson, I'm the Global Cyber Threat and Incident Response Security Operations Manager at Verifone. Security operations, threat intelligence, and all the IR stuff comes to that. Um, Again, previously I've done work in DevSecOps, and I actually started out in infrastructure. So, I've been all over the place really.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Okay. And how are you sort of finding your role at the moment? Obviously at Verifone.
Good. It's constantly busy, isn't it? It's a constantly changing world, and I think as much as I think AI is getting beaten down everyone's throat, I think it is there's a lot to be concerned about, and I think it is making things a little bit more difficult in terms of capabilities from the other side.
Yeah, yeah, it's certainly an interesting time, let's say, isn't it? Obviously, with like AI affecting it, and then it's like whilst everyone's getting to grips with that, we've got obviously quantum coming around the corner. It's like the big brother, and it's like, oh, I've not even understood AI. I've only just learned what it means, and now we've got that one to come. But one step at once, Mike. So, but today, what we'll be discussing is the dark web. And the dark web has been around for a while, but I'm hoping we can just kind of go a little bit more in depth on that one. Obviously, I know that your role is very much threat intelligence and incident response focused, but in terms of, I just wanted to pick your brain and go sort of more of an inch wide, a mile deep, specifically on the dark web today. So might as well start off with the helicopter overview. Mike, in your words, what is the dark web?
Um, the dark web is just a series of computers basically that are all joined into the Tor network. Like a super high level, it is just, a series of computers running different, like parallel to what would become the clean web.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously people might have heard of the Tor browser. That's basically just the special browser to access it and connect to the Tor network. I think, traditionally, I think originally it was developed by, was it the US Navy? It's some hyper secure communications platform many years ago, but obviously it's got huge privacy implementations that, it has a lot of good. It's one of these, I think you bring something out with a lot of good, but obviously people always take advantage.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They see the tool for different reasons. It all depends what stuff hands it falls into, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I suppose like a just a caveat to that before we fully get into it is like I've been getting my head around recently, sort of ADID and sort of NSISDN location and how them two tools how they were initially used as like a marketing tool just to detect fraudulent bot activity. But now it's been spotted that like, look, if that tool sort of was to be misused, it can be kind of like a quite a powerful tool, and we'll sort of leave it at that one, Mike, before I get some very serious officials knocking on my door. Um, but yes, so Mike, um, let's just debunk a few myths at this moment in time. So the dark web to the untrained eye, to the man in the street, the dark web, I think, will be perceived as um this underground sort of dodgy place where internal body parts are being sent all over the place and loads of criminal activity. Yeah, they're right and they're wrong at the same time. So, like, what are some myths that you see about the dark web? You're like, it's not just that because you've alluded to the dark web can be used for good as well. So, just what are some myths you say, mate?
I think it's popular in like TV and movies to
Yeah.
have, oh, everything's in the dark web and it's just this, you imagine everyone sat there in the dark hoodie in a seedy room just logged in. And no, that's not the case. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's obviously illicit marketplaces. Are they on the clear web as well? Yes. I think a lot of the myths, it's like these hitman for hire, or you can go on the dark web and in 20 minutes you could pay to have someone killed. I mean, there's a lot of write-ups about how that's just not the case. And don't get me wrong, I think if you looked anywhere for long enough, you could find something that you're after. But, I think it's just this sort of like a bazaar of drugs and, guns. is a little bit a stretch of the truth. And again, there are obviously marketplaces and things doing that, but I think the dark web as a whole, if you just think of it as the normal internet, you
Yeah.
just need to have a slightly different door to get into it. It's no different. It's the same core technologies. It's a web page basically. It's not anything too fancy.
Yeah. How do you get on it, Mike?
Yeah, so that's just you use the Tor browser. The Tor project, maintain that.
Yeah.
And then you download this browser, you click connect, and you go on.
Oh,
And I mean, the one thing people will notice is it's super slow. But
right.
it's running on some random chap in Sussex might have a spare computer that he's using as an exit node. So it's not got this huge bandwidth that we'd expect in the speed.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was like, was it the National Cybercrime Center said, if you find any of these tools on your child's computer, they're a hacker. And I think it was Nmap in the Tor browser. Well, the Tor browser doesn't make you a hacker. It means you have access to a slightly different part of the internet, but
Yeah.
it doesn't, in of itself, it's completely passive. I mean, if you're in a country with pretty poor privacy laws, people will use it just to try and hide their activity online and give them that little bit more protection.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that dissimilar to a VPN. I mean, obviously, technically speaking, it is, but you connect to this browser, it connects to its network, and you can go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds dangerously easy to sort of get on to the dark web.
And it is. It's not. I think there's that's probably one of the biggest myths that it's this. You have to be, a sophisticated hacker to be able to use the dark web. You download. It's no different to downloading Firefox or Chrome.
Yeah.
Literally, the only caveat with that is you kind of have to know where you're going. There's
Yeah.
not like you can't just Google things. Basically, there's no search engine. I know there's projects that kind of index it, but it's not quite. It's a lot more disjointed than what the internet as you know it would be.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, so how do threat actors actually use these forums, these marketplaces, these encrypted platforms to actually coordinate their attacks then?
Yeah, so I think again it adds that little bit of anonymity, which is why it's chosen. You could arguably have a hacker forum on the clear web. The only difference would be that it would be quite easy for the US government to subpoena Amazon's records and get all the logs and IPs, and having the Tor network, it adds that anonymity. It means that there's not a central individual that sort of controls the data. Um, a lot of it's masked, and then that's kind of why it's the favored platform because it makes it more difficult to find. It's not impossible. There are cases where they can find IPs and backtrace and things, but it adds that extra buffer basically. But I mean they're using it. I mean obviously the dark web marketplaces are huge. You can go on and sell guns, drugs, whatever you fancy really. But again, that same anonymity helps the threat actors.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of hacking forums, and they'll go on, they'll share. I've stolen someone's browser cookies because I've got a virus on their computer. Do you want to spy it for $5? Bits and pieces like that. It's again, you could do it clear web. It's that extra layer to protect them. It's not they couldn't not do it if it wasn't on the dark web, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of the types of attack coming from the dark web compared to the clear web, like how different are they or how similar are they in terms of severity, in terms of you being on the good side, being able to sort of triage shed incidents, like how's the different in complexity, severity, all sorts of types of attacks is it from the originating point?
It makes my job a lot easier if someone's coming from the dark web because
Really?
there's no legitimate business reason for us to see a connection from the Tor network. So as soon as you see any IP address that's been associated with Tor, immediately you know there's something up. You can look to block it. You can isolate. I mean, there's very, very good block lists that are maintained that you can basically just blanket ban all of the Tor IP addresses. Um, Again, if you're using something like DigitalOcean or AWS, it gets a little bit more complicated because it's not an immediate red flag. You have to do your homework basically. But for things like Tor, I mean, obviously, it also requires a third party tool. So, if you're trying to do data exfiltration, for instance, on a server, well, you'd have to install a binary to then connect to the Tor network to then exfil the data. Whereas if you were to use something like Google Drive or, OneDrive just to shoot the data off, it's a lot easier. It sits in a network's traffic pattern a lot better.
Yeah,
Um, so I don't think there's, and obviously there are some threat actors using the Tor network to do C2 communication bits and pieces like that, but I don't think it's as popular because there is that. It makes it easier to work out that there's something afoot before you've actually worked out what's going on.
yeah, yeah. Really interesting. Um, so I suppose what are the business risks then of ignoring the dark web at this moment in time? Because like you say, let's go back to the start. Is this still this sensationalized sort of concept of like, oh, the dark web, it's just for the movies. But it's not, it's a real thing, it's here and attacks do originate from it. So yeah, how does the sort of dark web's intelligence, reputation fit into the boardroom? And are most boardrooms paying attention to this now, or is it put on the people like yourself to educate the risk? Basically, in a roundabout way, Mike, my question to yourself is, what is the business risk of ignoring the dark web?
I think in a lot of cases, the dark web can be a pretty effective early warning system.
Yeah,
Like ransomware groups are known to have dark websites. They'll publish who they've compromised that week, all that good stuff. Where, if you're looking at your third-party supply chain risk, and you're monitoring the dark web, you're able to go, well, actually, I know that my widget supplier has been ransomware this week. They've probably not come out and told us straight away because obviously they're dealing with the incident and having to understand it. But straight away you'd go, okay, well, I know there's a risk here. Or, it could even be that there's a consultancy that you have contractors from. Well, they've been ransomware. Okay, well, what connections do they have back to our network, bits and pieces like that. But even down to, how many of us will sign into our work email on a personal laptop?
yeah,
Well, how many of us have antivirus on the work laptop? Experience tells me not a lot of people will have antivirus on their personal laptop. So, you can get these early warning alarms where it's someone trying to sell your corporate email address and password because they've compromised this device.
yeah,
Now, you go in, you investigate it, you know that it's not a corporate device, but it's that early warning system that before you're seeing brute force attacks or, suspicious logins, you get, okay, well, someone's selling it. We know there's a compromise outside of our remit of control.
yeah,
So it's great for things like that. And then I think the Oracle leak recently was quite a good example where um, there was a threat actor trying to sell access to the OCI platform. Again, you see the paper, you see the news, bleeping computers are telling you that a threat actor is claiming to have compromised it, but you don't get the full picture. Being able to, use a sock puppet and access these forms, you can get the insight. You can see what other threat actors are saying about it as well, which is quite a unique perspective. So a lot of the comments were, yeah, this isn't as big as it seems. It isn't worth the money they want, X amount of millions. And it's getting that opinion from people who are already on the inside. It's not that much different to Facebook, where someone was to come
mm,
out with this grand claim, and you'll have someone being like, well, no, that's not true. But it gives you that immediate, you can not disarm yourself, but you can start looking through and understanding, if people are like, oh, wow, this is big. Yep, okay, well, let's keep plowing onto this. But it's quite good in that respect. And even in terms of, I think the Oracle one was quite interesting because Oracle's response wasn't particularly great.
yeah,
I mean, their blanket statement was, "We've not been compromised, everything's fine." Well, there was a list of 300,000 accounts and email addresses that would potentially disagree with that.
yeah,
So it was quite a difficult one, but being able to analyze the data yourself and sort of understand what is being said makes it, you're not taking it sort of second or third hand through, different blog posts and news articles. So it was quite beneficial in that respect, and you can plan from it there.
yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. And I suppose, like, even just in your day-to-day job, then, Mike, like, how much are you sort of do you set up alerts on the dark web, or is it automated, or do you like you say, like, how much involvement do you actually have with it on a day-to-day, given your role at Verifone?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously have dark web monitoring capabilities,
Yeah,
for, identity, brand, all of that sort of good stuff. And it is quite powerful. Again, using the example that, one of the employees at your company has signed in on their laptop that their kids have been playing Minecraft from and downloading all the viruses with
Yep.
all these mods. Um, we wouldn't have any visibility of awareness because it's outside of like our remit of control.
Yep.
So all we would see would be, we're getting hundreds of different login attempts from all over the globe because someone's bought this bundle for $5. Whereas when you get these alerts, you're able to proactively go, okay, well, let's, control the account. I mean, in some cases, if we're cycling our passwords X number of days, you can look at it and go, well, like, based on the date and timestamps here, that password's dead anyway.
Yep.
But it just gives you that early warning system, which is quite beneficial. I think it's a double-edged sword though, in the terms of monitoring. So obviously, you know, let's just speculate that I sell widgets and it's at widget.com. Well, it means that any customer who has an account on widget.com would also come up in my searches because I'm monitoring for widget.com.
Yeah.
Um, and then you get into this really sort of murky grey area where you know that your customers have potentially been compromised,
Yes.
but you aren't the compromise. It
Yes.
was nothing to do with you. And I think it's a very grey area in terms of, how do we secure the account that we know has been compromised without implicating us into, oh, well, you must have been compromised to know this. And
Yes.
we can't exactly email customers and be like, oh, you're all over the dark web. Well, how did you know that? And
Yeah.
it's a balancing act. It definitely is. But yeah, I mean, even for brand detection,
Yep.
I've seen examples where ransomware brand detection has used optical character recognition and, let's say I've got a 0365 subscription. They've ransomware this invoice from Microsoft. Well, Microsoft brand detection would alert and go, oh, you're associated with a ransomware.
Yep.
So you can get a lot of depth, but again, like using it for third-party monitoring tools is really beneficial as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying there about obviously all about the cutting through the noise or the alerted noise. It's like yeah, it's a balancing act as you mentioned, and there is sort of there's a lot out there. The volume of data, like you said, and sort of when it comes to sort of leaked credentials as well. Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly about with it being murky waters.
And
Um,
it's the validity of the data as well, because
okay,
you could go and turn on this tool and just assume that every threat actor or every person that's posting that they're compromised, everything is correct. They're not lying. It's true.
yeah,
It's not for clout.
yeah,
And you've got to, I mean, at the end of the day, it is just data until you're able to process it and understand it and turn it into intelligence.
yeah,
Because it's a little bit like it's like any threat intelligence. You could go out and you could pay for a indicator of a compromised feed.
yeah,
Brilliant. We're getting 400,000 IOCs every day, but what
yeah,
are we doing with them? And that's the difference. Unless you understand what you're going to do with the data and actually either have like a pipeline in place to process it, even have the technical team or ability to, basically break down the noise and go, well, actually, out of the 3,000 alerts we've seen this past week, here are the five that we actually should look into. And
yeah,
it's that, I think a lot of organizations, it's a maturity cycle with your intelligence, and it's the same with normal threat intelligence. You've got to work out what the answer to the question you're asking is.
yeah,
Because you go, well, we need threat intelligence, but it's like, why do we need the threat intelligence? And
yeah.
until you know why you need it, there's no point getting it and hoping that you'll work out after because it's not gonna work.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely brilliant point that. Yeah, really good. I like that one. Um, so moving it forward then, how I suppose you sort of segued into it there at the back end of that question. How can companies sort of leverage the dark web for good then? For all these insights that are coming from it that aren't on the clean web, how can it actually be used for good?
I think it depends on the organization.
Okay.
I mean, I've worked at organizations that we were fortunate enough to have a lot of ex-military personnel there. Some of them were ex-military intelligence. They were fantastic in terms of processing, analyzing, assessing data. They were also able to maintain sock puppets, and they did a lot of the intelligence work themselves.
Yep.
And again, there'll be organizations across the globe that have dedicated teams doing this and maintaining these personas. They've got all the data and it's sort of first-hand accounts. I
Yep.
think realistically, that's, unless you're selling threat intelligence or you've got a very unique threat model, that's just not, it's not a worthwhile investment. If you're trying to go to your CISO or your CEO and go, I need a team of military intelligence folks to process this data for me and then let us know what we need to do. it's going to be a hard sell. But I think it's becoming a little bit more accessible.
Yep.
There's still some of the tooling is still quite expensive, but there are sort of disruptors in the market at the moment that are doing a pretty good job and are actually able to give you the data without it being too much of a burden. But then
Yep.
again, you've still got to have that technical team to understand what you're doing with it. I mean, you could start shooting all this data to your SOC analysts and then go, well, what do you want us to do with it?
Yep.
And it's that piece where I think the brand detection's quite big. In terms of who's speaking about you on the dark web. Because
Yep.
again, there's ransomware forums, it could be access brokers, it could be, any of the subsets of the sort of the cyber criminal business model.
Yep.
If you know that there's an access broker selling access to your site, well, okay, you've been compromised, but you know it's going to get worse.
Yep.
So it's that, if you get a notification going, okay, well, someone's trying to sell access to your VPN.
Yep.
Well, one, you know that you've got an issue with your VPNs, you can start that IR process, you can triage. But two, you can also not necessarily rest easy, but you can go, okay, well, I know something's coming, but it's not
Yep.
happened yet. And it's that, it's yeah, it's a finite, it's like again, ransomware and like ransom extortion. You'll see these posts all the time about these companies that have been ransomwared, and here's the example of the leak data.
Yep.
Again, if you know that you've got critical suppliers that have been ransomware, it's really helpful because you can either prepare for the disruption and business continuity, or you at least sort of go, okay, well we've got an account with them or a connection, or they process something for us. You can start that understanding because again, and I think third party risk at the moment seems to be quite a hot topic,
Yep.
and it's identifying which suppliers would hurt you the most. And now it might not necessarily be the ones you'd expect in
Mhm.
terms of, who will we send? It could be an outsourced HR company. Would they be listed as your top priority for a supplier? Well, no, because if they go down, the business is still making money, this business is still churning. However, if they've got all your employees' data, there's a huge issue in terms of, GDPR, CCPA, all of that good stuff. So it's that balancing act and having to understand each threat. But again, it builds into like your threat model. And the amount of talks I've heard recently on third party risk, and it's like, well, what's going to hurt us the most? But it's like identifying that in terms of, if you've got people leaking your employees' confidential information, well, that's going to impact you, not for, it make it really easy to fish. But also, if I was an employee and I had all my data from this third party leak, I'd be pretty upset with it. So
Yeah.
it's that, it's how you want to utilize the data and understand it, I think.
Yep. Yeah. No, I like that point. Yeah, really good. And I suppose just linking it back to the start of the pod is pretty much one of my last questions is how do you sort of see AI impacting the dark web moving forward?
Um, to be honest with you, I'm not too sure. I think the issue with AI is, and I think it's made things a lot more accessible.
Yep.
Go back even 2 or 3 years. If you wanted to write malware, you had to know how to write malware. Now, if you can give the prompts
Yep.
in a certain capacity, things like Gemini and ChatGPT will happily give you code that'll help you write ransomware.
Yep.
Now, as long as you preface it with I'm a security researcher and I want to test
Yeah.
my own
Yeah.
environment, it's fine. And I think there's, it's a different barrier to entry, but I mean there's already not necessarily dark web, but there's already like AI models that are being trained for offensive security
Yep.
and not white hat offensive security. There's already like hacking models being generated and things. And I think I think the dark web will continue to be the hangout
Yep.
for a lot of these threat actors just because it's, you know, could they go to the clear web? Yes, but it just doesn't make sense.
Yep.
And I think I don't know. I'm not sure the impact AI will have because I don't think there's from what I can see, I can't see there being much of a difference between using AI now and the dark web. And it might make it easier to send convincing posts.
Yep.
It'll help people. But again, there's that sub-market of instead of writing convincing phishing emails, well, I'll just go and ask Gemini.
Yeah.
So there will be a shift, and there'll also be people training AI models and all of that good stuff. But yeah, I can't see it being too different. I think AI is a bigger impact on its own. I think the dark web will continue just to exist and go, which it has for a very long time.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, Mike. Absolutely. I suppose my final question then, Mike, more than anything, is Let's hypothetically say that I am the CEO of a company, I'm one of your clients, and I have absolutely no knowledge of the dark web, but my company have just been breached via an attack from there. Um, Talk me through A, how I'd resolve that, and B, what would you advise to me moving forward to sort of protect my company from any attacks from the dark web?
I think obviously if you've just been breached, you'd be triggering your IR processes and procedures straight
Yeah,
away, either internally or you might have, depending on the size, a third party that's going to come in and assist with that. I think look at a roadmap for a threat intelligence program, not necessarily a dark web dedicated threat intelligence program. I think the dark web sits under your sort of global threat intelligence sort of plan. But yeah, you'd be wanting to understand, was there any indications that this happened months before? Was there, posts, discussions, forum breaches about? Because again, these some of these forums will have, I've stumbled across, I don't know, Amazon's like SQL server that's publicly exposed that is, you know, this is the data. And people don't necessarily act on it, but they will share the information or they'll be, I've just ran a mass scan across the internet and I found these systems and these are the companies. And, there's again, it's like a weird like everyone has their own skills. I think
yeah,
it's not dissimilar to a building site. Like, these access brokers, you can compare them to a plasterer. You wouldn't ask your plasterer to tile your bathroom.
yeah,
So this access broker then goes, well, okay, I've got the access. Who wants to buy it off me? Or, give me some of the ransom back when you go in and inevitably do what you need to do. Again, it's like the scattered spider at the moment. They're very good social engineers. They will break access and get accounts and gain that foothold. Occasionally they'll continue the attack, but some of the time it's just a quick, okay, we've got in. Who's going to pay us money just to get? So it's that balancing act, but you can, depending on the forums, you can see history of this and you can see discussions and, you know, little bits of information that might not necessarily at the time mean anything to you. But as you start to build up a profile, and again, this is turning the data into intelligence. If you've got a team of people who are monitoring this, understanding it, and then producing you reports, it gives you that ability to go, okay, well, we know we've been tracking actor A for the past 6 months, and they seem to have taken a fancy to us. Here's what they've discussed. Here's what they're trying to do and understand, and you can start to build that threat actor profile,
yeah, yeah.
and then get that understanding of, okay, well, some of the people they're engaging with are known for X, Y, and Z. Have we seen any of this in, little pieces, and you start to string together.
Mm. Fantastic. Mike, thank you very much for coming on the Screw Space podcast, mate. You've been a terrific guest. Yeah, like I said, I just wanted to kind of really delve in just an inch wide mile deep. That's the saying, isn't it? Yeah. So just wanted to go fully in on that, and yeah, I've really enjoyed the last half an hour. So if anybody has any questions for Mike, what he's raised today, I'll be sure to put his information down below, and also Veriphones as well, so you can check out what them guys do. But once again, Mike, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, mate.